So, in general, consciousness simply means awareness. And so, consciousness is not something that belongs just to human beings, it belongs to all animals, so long as they have at least one sense. Because it's sensation that is the first level of being able to be aware of something that's outside oneself. So, if I'm in the heat too long, it'll burn me up, it'll make me like itself, right? But if I'm aware of the heat, if I feel too hot, I can move. And so the feeling of the heat is a different kind of relationship to the heat compared to just sitting there and burning up. And then there are levels of that awareness. As our consciousness develops, we see things, we taste things, we touch things, we sense them. Then we investigate them, we ask questions, we start asking, well, what is that? Why is that? How does it work? Then we start to come to understand what causes it.
So to me, in my opinion, being conscious is being fully aware of life and all of your surroundings. And I think most importantly, it is really being in a place of acceptance that suffering and pain are part of life. And so rather than fighting that or resisting that or being disappointed by that, accepting that. So I think a huge part of consciousness is acceptance of what is in all aspects of life.
The ultimate consciousness would have to be a consciousness that actually is what it knows. Whatever would have this highest level of consciousness would have to exist in such a way, where there's no differences at all. It's just a complete oneness, like a drop of water being absorbed into a pool, right? Where you can't tell the difference between the drop and the pool. And I'm going to know something best the more I know it the way this highest consciousness knows it. People who are practicing their religion basically are saying that what they're doing is developing a relation with this higher consciousness to help them behave in the world.
What I see or what I've come to know about consciousness, I think, is through my spirituality practice and my being raised Catholic as a young girl till I was 10, and then my family shifting over and saying we're not going to follow Catholicism anymore, we're going to just look at the spiritual aspect of life and tap into something greater than us. Part of my experience, I taught at the International School in Prague in the Czech Republic for 4 years, and I took a bunch of students, middle schoolers, to Nepal. We went to Kathmandu and we climbed the Annapurna region of the Himalayas. Everyone around us was Buddhist. Everyone was living in poverty, but they were happy and they were smiling and life was good. And when times are rough for me in everyday life, I think about how all of those Nepalese people, and especially the Buddhist people in Nepal, were just continuously talking about enlightenment. And I raise my hand up like this because the prayer wheel and the flags all go up to the center of these temples, all about rising up and through the pain and the hardship, getting to the really good stuff. I believe strongly in that something higher is guiding me, and that if I channel that in each day and try to live each day and each moment to the fullest, that is conscious, that's living consciously.
We have an ability to kind of step outside ourselves, okay? So I can consider myself sort of as an object of perception, certainly if I look in the mirror, and as an object of understanding, right? When I ask myself, what am I? Well, I'm a human being. Well, who am I? Well, I'm Gabe Del Real. What's that mean? What's my history? Where did I come from? Where am I going? So whenever I ask those questions, I treat myself as though, to some degree, I'm not myself. Therein is sort of, again, the paradox is that you are trying to have a relation with yourself, and the paradox is that in order to do that, you have to have a relation with what's not yourself. That's what some refer to as metacognitive.
I see the consciousness evolve through metacognition that students develop over time. I feel honored to be part of that process, in that when a student oftentimes is either diagnosed with a learning difference or is grappling with understanding their learning style. It's a real trajectory of what is for them.
So consider that the first place a piece of art exists is in the mind. And let me suggest too that that's where it exists most perfectly, because as soon as you put it out in the material, right, you're going to compare it to that idea that you had ahead of time. And if it meets that, you call it good, you call it perfect. Okay, if it's not, you say it's missing, it's not true. Well, analogously, with natural things, right? Natural things first exist perfectly, preeminently in the mind of pure being. And so if I really want to know what something is, I need to know it the way pure being knows it. And so it follows that if I'm going to know myself best, I have to know it in light of the way pure consciousness knows it.
When a student will be struggling with something, whether it be taking a test, and I keep trying this process and it never works, and I just don't do well on tests, and then maybe a year later, because I really think it's a process, the light bulb sort of goes off. Wait a minute, I've learned this over time with trial and error or with failing, and now I understand I need this, and then they're able to articulate it or give an example of it to a teacher. That's the best case when I'm partnering with a student to explain to a teacher about what their process is. Maybe you would have fought it in the beginning, like, I don't need time and I don't want time and that's not going to help me. And then that process of maybe being willing to give it a try or being exhausted by doing the same thing over and over again and then not getting anywhere and deciding I'm going to try something different. That's a moment of consciousness and metacognition that's so important.
It does open the world up in a way that isn't open for a lot of folks. On the other, it kind of can, in its worst manifestation, give rise to a lot of overthinking things. Sometimes you need to act. Once you get into your head, it's really hard to get out. And so the discipline is to be able to navigate going in and out with a kind of fluidity.
A huge part of how I live my life is being just, again, it goes back to expect the unexpected. See, I always have seen since I was a kid, life as the glass is half full. So I think that my consciousness is constantly evolving from the standpoint of resiliency, optimism, and that, you know what, I'm excited about the future because who knows what next level of consciousness I'm going to get to.